It has been such a long time since I have had a vacation. Well, I decided to keep things retro and brought along my PS1. Been meaning to play through Brave Fencer Musashi again. It is such an overlooked gem. The one thing about physical media I could really do without. Forgetting to bring the actual game with me. Well, at least I brought my Vita along to play some digital games.
You can still play something on the PS1, you know.
What are you, nuts? Give me a heart attack, why don't you?
Same here. Look, I didn't ask to be stuck in this Vita. If you were going to stick me in a handheld, I'd prefer something Nintendo branded at least. Editor's note. See the previous video of Level 1 Sword.
Fair enough. Not sure if you're more annoying in there or less. Anyway, what is it you were saying about playing something on the PS1? I forgot to bring any games with me.
Simple. Do you have any of your memory cards with you?
I did manage to remember those, yeah.
Then you should play a game I like to call Deletion. Delete all of your save game progress on the lousy PS1. As the most elite gamer on Level 1 Sword, I promise it would be an improvement in your gaming.
Yeah, I know. You don't like the PS1 or consoles in general. But I do think the inclusion of operating systems around this time was a neat idea, and they became mainstays for consoles and eventually handhelds.
If you're going to be talking about OS stuff, count me in. I'm already in the Vita, so I might as well talk about the bubbles.
Oh, because you'll be completely unbiased as always. Anyway, if we're going to do this, we'd better do it right. Let's start at the beginning. Perhaps it is more correct to call what we're talking about system software, or even more generically, the user interface or UI. Sometimes this firmware is referred to as a BIOS if it's really simple, such as the early CD-based systems. But for the purposes of today's video, I'll be throwing them all into the same broad category. I know I will end up leaving a lot of systems out, but I'll only be talking about systems that I've used and currently own. There's nothing worse on YouTube than someone who thinks they know what they're talking about when they really don't.
I'm the same, G. I am the same. I can't wait for you to show off the NES's OS, where when you turn it on without a cartridge inside, it flashes gray, then black, then gray, then black. Why y'all looking at me like that?
So, moving on, let's begin delving into this often overlooked world of video game console and handheld operating systems. Like EG was saying, the PS1 does allow you some options when you're not using it for playing games. There's a CD player and also a memory card manager for deleting and copying save files. Depending on which model of PS1 you have, the look of the OS appears more or less, how you say, 90s. The PS1, that is ONE, the smaller, lighter, cuter version of the original PlayStation, has these visualizations when playing a CD, which I probably appreciate way more than I should. On to the 6th generation of video game hardware. We've got all the big players on board. Sony's PlayStation 2, Nintendo's GameCube, and Microsoft's Xbox. On the PS2, the OS seamlessly transitions from the boot screen. The first obvious option ripe for selecting is the confusingly named Browser. From here, you can do pretty much what you could do on the PS1 system menu. Manage your memory card saves and access the CD music player. You can also access DVDs and games on disc from here if you choose to pop those in the PS2's disc tray while in the browser. The second option, System Configuration, is where we'll find all the new stuff. Settings for clock, aspect ratio, digital sound, component video, remote control, and language. The clock has additional settings that are fairly standard like time zones and such, but if you press the square button, the PS2 shows some of its graphical capabilities by removing the text and doing away with the blurred focus on the background to reveal this gorgeous, cleverly designed clock. I don't think there will ever come a day where this doesn't look good. Back in the main menu, you may notice the triangle button floating there next to the word Version. Depending on your model of PS2, you'll have slight differences in what you'll see if you do press triangle to get into this list, which at first doesn't seem to hold much interest. But go through these options and the triangle prompt in the bottom right corner will let you know which item has additional options for you. My favorite would have to be the PlayStation driver. Accessing this can help speed up PS1 game load times and smooth out textures in those games, making them look similar to Nintendo 64 games. It's not for everyone, but it's a shame Sony decided not to include these options in any other PlayStation hardware that can run PS1 games. The GameCube keeps things much more simple with its OS. It must be said how slick this cube layout is, which rotates to different sides depending which option you select by pressing the corresponding direction on the control stick. Pressing up goes into Gameplay, which gives you a nice logo and brief description for the game you're about to launch. Pressing right goes into Calendar, which allows you to set the date and time. Pressing down brings up a memory card manager, while pressing left grants access to sound and screen position options. Simple, yet effective. Then there's the Xbox. Hope you like the color green because there's no shortage of it here. 4 options greet you to pick from: Memory, Music, Xbox Live, and Settings. Memory is basically your game save manager, though the Xbox has an internal hard drive instead of having to rely on memory cards. Music leads to a player where you can not only play CDs, but also rip music from those CDs onto the internal hard drive. Xbox Live allows you to sign in and manage your online account, good luck getting that working these days, and Settings lead further down this rabbit hole. Here we have clock, language, audio options, including Dolby Digital and DTS sound to be used in-game as well as with DVD playback, video for aspect ratios and different resolutions, network settings, auto sign-in for your Xbox Live account, parental control for setting a PIN, auto off for automatic power down after 6 hours of no input, and system info for all the legal mumbo-jumbo. I am pretty biased here, but I think the PS2 has the best balance between the other two consoles. The GameCube at least somewhat displays what kind of graphical capability the machine is capable of, whereas the Xbox makes you think it's great playing OG Game Boy games. Things got really ambitious for the 7th generation systems. Sony and Microsoft engaged in UI warfare by giving you options upon options of options in the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 respectively. Even handhelds started getting in on the action, granting you more to do than just stare at a logo. I won't be going too far into detail here since you can probably make a whole series of videos on some of these UIs, so I'll be zooming out more to keep things moving. Beginning with the 360, the dashboard went through 3 major versions: Blades, New Xbox Experience, and Metro. My 360 is fully updated, so the only interface I can show you in detail is the Metro system, unfortunately. Furthest on the left is the Bing option. You heard that right. Bing is the search option you can use to search for content on the marketplace and on your system. Next over is the Home category, where you have an option to open the disk tray, manage pinned items, recent items, Microsoft Movies and TV, My Apps, My Games, Help option, and another search which appears to do exactly what the dedicated Bing search does. Next, under Social, you'll have your friends, activity feed, avatar store, and the option to sign in or out of Xbox Live. Now is a good time to mention that you'll have more or fewer options depending on whether you are signed into your Xbox Live account or not. Under Games, we again find My Games, Browse Games, Search Games, the same as the other two searches, add-ons for DLC presented in a bafflingly far too simple line of options, demos, and A through Z for viewing everything on the store sorted by letter. There are also tiles that just advertise the most recent games, and since we are now 2 generations away from the 360, these games probably won't change ever again. Under Movies and TV we have, well, movies and TV options. Most of which we've already seen except for new releases, which appears to continue receiving content if you are using your 360 to watch movies and shows. Under Apps, it's just like the movies and TV tabs with all the same options you had before, except they now apply to the apps. And lastly, we have Settings, which contains the categories of System, Profile, Preferences, Connect, Account, Privacy, Family, and Turn Off. I don't own a Connect, so mine is faded out on the screen, but there are also Connect settings under System. And this reflects my issues with the Metro-styled UI of the 360. The same options are copy and pasted in different areas to make the experience overwhelming even if you're used to more advanced consoles with their additional options. How many searches do we need to have access to? The marketplace isn't in its own section, it's just integrated into the rest of the UI, which makes me feel like I'm non-stop being advertised to. It's bloated, but does run very smoothly at least, and I can see why many 360 gamers miss the older UIs that just seem to be easier to use. On the PS3, it's a far different story in terms of the look of the UI and how consistent it has remained since 2006. The biggest change came sometime in 2009 when Sony changed the font and logo for the PS3, abandoning the Sam Raimi Spider-Man text for the much more appealing, rounded PS3 logo. The text has remained for the PS4, PS Vita, and even the PS5. This text worked its way into the UI, which was probably the biggest change the system saw. The PS3 uses an interface known as the Cross Media Bar, or XMB for short. All the way to the left you have the Users category for managing different profiles. Then we have Settings, which provides a wealth of options but makes it manageable by dividing the settings into various sub-settings. Next over is Photo, which has a very cool photo gallery as well as an option for playlists. Next is Music, which grants access to your Spotify account as well as a playlist option and any music you've ripped onto the hard drive. Next is Video, which contains a folder labeled BD Data Utility. Did you know Blu-ray discs, at least at one point, actually installed files onto your player? Followed by a video editor and uploader, the PlayStation Store that will bring you to the video side of the store, or would have if PlayStation still sold video content, followed by any videos you have saved on the hard drive. Next is TV/video services where all your streaming apps sit. Further right is the game section, which is very important for a video game console to have. Currently you can access a PS Vita System Application Utility folder for backing up save files, then a Game Data Utility folder for game installations, a memory card utility for creating virtual memory cards for PS1 and PS2 games, a Save Data Utility folder for PSP, another one for PS3, the PlayStation Store again, followed by any digital games you have downloaded on your system. Next up is Network, with access to online instruction manuals, remote play options, an internet browser, and an internet search that I doubt employs Bing. Up next is PlayStation Network, which allows you to manage your PSN account, a What's New section that nowadays offers shortcuts into different parts of the PlayStation Store, as well as recent games you've launched. The Trophy Collection shows off your trophies, PlayStation Plus manages your membership, and yet another way to access the PlayStation Store. Lastly, we have Friends, where you can block, add, review players you've met online, start chats, make chat rooms, and send and read messages along with your friends list. There really is no option or setting left out here. This is quite an easy to use UI that manages not to overwhelm you, in spite of all that lies at your fingertips. Or thumbs. Probably more likely thumbs. I do like how when you have a game highlighted, the entire background gets taken over by the game and sometimes even plays music from the game to gear you up for playing it. When it came to the Wii, Nintendo of course went the different route and rightfully put the focus of the UI squarely on the games. This grid-like orientation presents games and applications as channels. TV channels, mind you, not YouTube channels. Any disc-based games will be accessible on the disc channel up here, and it's neat to watch the game take over the channel. Unfortunately, only Wii games have these neat animations, while GameCube games have a somewhat weak and generic presentation. Next is the Mii channel for creating and managing your Miis, followed by any games and applications you may have. I'm on the Wii's UI built into the Wii U, so I'm missing things like the weather and photo channel, but I do still have the Wii Shop channel for downloading content like Virtual Console, aka old games. In the bottom left corner is a Wii button of sorts, and it leads to the various options and settings for the system. Again, I'm on a virtual Wii on the Wii U, so I am missing some options, but here you can see the data management section with two options, save data and channels, used to manage their respective data. Back on the main menu, next to the Wii Options button is an SD card icon the Wii labels as SD card menu. You can access games and other content saved to an SD card if you have one inserted in the Wii. In the bottom right corner is the Wii Message Board button, which lets you see messages, time spent playing different games, and a calendar. The Wii Channel UI is a relaxing, lovely alternative to the bulky PlayStation 3 OS and bloated Xbox Metro system. Sure, it means that the Wii has far fewer capabilities than the HD Twins have, but I'd say there's enough there to get you where you need to go without distracting you. The 7th gen handhelds began implementing their own UIs, and since these systems were released before their console big brothers, they actually predate the UIs we just talked about. Starting with the DS. In the top left corner of the top screen, the DS will display your username in this top bar. The clock and date come next, followed by icons which tell you things like what screen a GBA game will play on, whether a game will boot immediately when you turn the DS on or come to this main menu, and also the battery charge level. Below that is an analog clock and a calendar. On the bottom screen are options for launching a DS game if inserted, then PictoChat, DS download play, then the GBA game launch option if a cart is inserted. Along the bottom we can see three icons. The one on the left toggles the brightness setting, the one on the right can be used to set an alarm, a nifty feature I should really try one of these days, and the middle icon brings up the system settings. The first icon, a pink square with a wrench, is labeled as Options. Selecting it will expand to three separate options, all with pink squares and different icons. A globe for language, an arrow and rectangle for the startup mode, and a GBA icon labeled GBA mode for selecting the screen to show GBA games on. The next setting is a blue square with a clock and calendar called Clock. The blue squares here include an alarm clock labeled Alarm, where you can set, say it with me now, an alarm! A blue square labeled Date with a calendar as its icon, and a blue square with the icon of a clock labeled Time, which allows you to set the time. Next is a group of green boxes with the icon of a person labeled as User. The icon with a person next to a line labeled Username allows you to change the username, because of course it does. The icon with the birthday cake and candle labeled Birthday allows you to enter your birthday. I always mean to check my DS to see what happens on my birthday, but always forget to. The next green square shows a grid labeled as Color, which allows you to change the theme color for the main menu. Lastly, the green box with the person below a speech bubble called Message lets you leave a personal message. Not too sure how this one is used. The final setting is a yellow block with a targeting reticle on it that allows you to calibrate the touchpad. To this day, I find it bizarre that once you exit out of these system settings, the DS shuts down. It apparently has to before you can use it for anything else, so it is quite odd. The DSi also needs to be covered since its UI is entirely different and in a way, familiar. Things like username, date, clock, and battery level are in their expected places, but now you can also see pictures you've taken with the DSi's cameras, and press L or R to open the camera to take more pictures. On the bottom screen, we see an almost Wii-like interface with icons strongly resembling channels. Any apps or games downloaded can be found on this row, And you can even find original DS apps like PictoChat and DS Download Play. The game card slot will display the game currently inserted, and the system settings launches into its own app. This has a mix of old and new settings, with the new ones being data management, wireless communications, parental controls, mic test, internet, country, system update, and format memory system. If we are strictly talking UIs, the DSi smokes the DS's original menu in terms of capabilities and usability. Speaking of familiar UIs, the PSP uses a version of the XMB that debuted before the PS3's version. And just like the PS3, the PSP has been updated and changed in conservative ways. On the far left we have the settings, which breaks down into further categories of settings. Here's one exclusive to the PSP, Extras, with mine having a digital comics app that I'm not sure on how to install. Next is Photo, which allows viewing of photos on your memory card, as well as using the PSP camera if you have one of those. Music comes next with options for Music Unlimited, Sense Me channels, and accessing music on your memory card. Video follows after, with only the option to view videos on your memory card. The game section contains game sharing, save data utility, and access to your digital and UMD games. An animated thumbnail and accompanying music do a good job of previewing games. On to network, we have online instruction manuals, location-free player, remote play, internet radio, RSS channel, internet browser, and internet search. There's a lot there that we could dive into, but this video is already running kind of long, so... PlayStation Network is the final section with account management, PlayStation Store, and information board. Just like on the PS3, the PSP's version of the XMB does a great job of giving you plenty of options and settings to dive into, while keeping it all organized enough to easily find and use. We can see things beginning to calm down with the 8th generation. Simplified and streamlined seemed to be what certain companies strove for, while others resolved around a central theme that tied all the elements together. Starting with the Wii U. The system was known for having its own screen on the gamepad in addition to using your TV screen, and the UI is spread across these screens. One screen shows your Mii surrounded by tons of other Miis that all gather under different sections of the UI. They can be accessed if this portion of the UI is being displayed on the gamepad's touchscreen, with the screens able to swap with the push of the X button. This isn't ideal, however, and it's better to stick with the grid layout on the other screen, which can be used when displayed on the gamepad or TV screen. There's a lot of similarity with the Wii's UI. Your Nintendo account settings can be found in the upper left corner where your Mii is displayed. The game disc inserted will show up in the same spot you saw it on the Wii, and just like the Wii, you will see other apps you may have on your system. You can even put apps and games into grouped folders, which is a nice touch. The bottom row includes your friend list, Miiverse, which no longer works, Nintendo eShop, internet browser, notifications, and download management. The one really obnoxious aspect of the Wii U system software is the complete inability to make any changes in the system settings without the gamepad. You must be using the gamepad in order to change or even see the settings you are trying to adjust. And it's a real pain to have to get this behemoth out just to adjust for daylight savings every 6 months. The new things you can do in these settings include managing Amiibo, setting the gamepad up as a TV remote, which is admittedly pretty cool, set burn-in reduction, configure power and standby options, transfer to another Wii U, and delete absolutely all your content and settings. The PS4 has a much streamlined system compared to the XMB from last gen. You have a fairly customizable main bar where you can sort and group your content with a few mainstay features. The PlayStation Store, What's New, and Library. A nice organizational tool that shows you all your content at a glance. If you let your selection rest on a game, the PlayStation Network will populate information about it, such as your trophies, how many people are playing and streaming the game alongside video clips, your friends who have played it, activities around the game, and direct access to the game's spot on the PlayStation Store, which is quite the boon when looking for DLC. The look of all this is admittedly busy and a bit messy, but has tons of usefulness that will just take getting used to. Scrolling up will bring you to categorized areas which currently display the following sections: PlayStation Plus, Notifications, Friends, Events, Messages, Party, Profile, Trophies, Settings, and Power. This also takes some getting used to coming off PS3, but as long as you remember to scroll up to access these important options, you'll have a hard time getting lost. Which brings us to our final console OS, the Nintendo Switch. The UI is super simple. Too simple, in fact. All your games and apps are displayed based on most recently played being placed furthest left, and above that in the upper left corner is your page, an area where you can access your profile, friend list, games your friends have been playing, online invites, friend suggestions based on smartphone Nintendo apps, Facebook friends, Twitter followers, and 3DS and Wii friends. You can also add friends using more conventional methods and manage your accounts and other settings under User Settings. Back on the main screen, if you scroll all the way to the right, you can access all software to see all your games, both digital and physical. Here you can organize your titles into groups, or access the eShop to re-download software you've already purchased. The bottom row of circular icons on the main screen has the following: Nintendo Switch Online for managing your subscription, News, Nintendo eShop, Album, Controllers, System Settings, and Sleep Mode. The system settings seem to get additions with every system update. We even recently got Bluetooth audio added as an option, which everyone wanted but no one thought Nintendo would ever unlock for use. Like I said, it's a bit too streamlined, but at least you can make adjustments whether the Switch is docked or in handheld mode. Moving on to handhelds, we have one which tries its best to expand on its predecessor's OS, while the other desperately attempts to separate itself into something unique. The Nintendo 3DS has a UI which has evolved over the years. The top screen is used to display your current internet status, number of play coins, the date, day, time, and battery charge along the top, while the bottom provides hotkey shortcuts for taking screenshots and accessing the cameras. The rest of the screen simply shows a 3D model of your current selection on the bottom screen. Moving down to the bottom screen, the top left corner contains access to the home menu settings where you can change and buy system themes, save and load home screen layouts, change screen brightness, toggle auto brightness, power saving mode, wireless communication and NFC, image share, amiibo settings, shortcuts to the eShop and system settings, home menu manual, and contact information. Since there are 6 different models of the 3DS, there are some options which may or may not be present. Also along the top of the bottom screen are game notes, a great way to write down passwords or even draw maps. Friend list, notifications, internet browser, Miiverse, and options to make the grid icons larger or smaller. The grid, very similar to what ended up on the Wii U, and inspired by the Wii channels, displays your games and apps. You can create folders and scroll across if your content exceeds the screen's real estate. It's an easy UI to come to terms with, and the fact you can suspend a game and access everything on such a fairly low-powered handheld is impressive.
By contrast, the Vita completely ditches every OS which came before it on PlayStation systems. The top bar contains information such as Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, opened apps, time, battery level, and notifications. Everything else exists within these bubbles. System application, bubble. Email client, bubble. Physical Vita game, that's right, a bubble. Pressing triangle brings up edit mode, which allows you to change the backgrounds, move bubbles around, and create and manage folders. As you open games and such, they exist to the right of everything else, and you can either use the touchscreen to peel them down off the screen, or simply hold down the circle button to watch the satisfying animation unfold, complete with sound effects.
Yeah, at first I was not sold on this UI, but the more I used it, the more I liked it. It is honestly one of the easiest, most intuitive OSs I've ever used, and I think it's one of the Vita's strengths. You know, EG, you're right. OS menus, as boring as they sound, can be pretty cool at times. I know that may not have been your intended point, but it's what I'm taking away from you today.
Sure, I guess if that's how this is going to go, Can you at least let me out of this Vita now?
You want me to unleash you on the world again? Free the elite gamers so that he may roam the earth again, destroying noob and pro alike? Oh, I think we can let the gaming world catch up a bit with you on hiatus. Rest your thumbs, good sir. And do try to calm down a bit. Later.
Ah, come on! Rats! This is EG with level 1 sword pleading with you to stay sharp out there.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to keep on top of the videos, definitely take a sec to subscribe. I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon if you want to follow me across the internet. Level 1 Sword also has a bi-weekly podcast, so give it a listen.